Jimmy Moore's fat again. Your diet is shit. Jimmy Moore has been doing keto for 12 fucking years, and you look at him, he's gaining weight and shit. You suck. You need to eat more plants. Plants and plants and plants and fucking more plants. Yes. Can you tell I'm a little triggered by vegans lately? The reason why is I recently got a question from one of my patrons on Patreon about Jimmy Moore and his very stark weight regain and, thoughts on it. And, one of the thoughts even questioning, should I be putting my eggs in this YouTube basket based on a diet that could result in what happened to Jimmy Moore? So I spent some time researching Jimmy Moore a little more. I mean, I was aware of him. I don't follow him necessarily because, I don't know, it's just there's something that didn't trigger in on the science with him, that made me gravitate to his podcast or his self-experimentation. I did notice that he was consuming a lot of frankenfoods that are essentially low-carb processed foods, like Atkins shakes for breakfast and shit, fucking 8 or 9 diet sodas a day, and I'm going to go through what I think is the cause of his issue based on the limited information I was able to come across. Of course, during my research, the first thing that you come across are plant-based motherfuckers going nuts, pointing him out as the reason. When you can go on the internet and find plenty of fucking overweight, obese, unhealthy vegans in the world, they'll of course show a picture of some ab motherfucker or the banana chick or one of these other motherfuckers that obviously works out enough to offset the carb and sugar intake that they have, not letting you know that if they stop doing that, their weight would skyrocket. Unless, of course, they were metabolically good to begin with. Another thing people don't take into account, Jimmy Moore was over 400 pounds, morbidly obese. Untold amounts of damage that he is trying to reverse, and it's taken a while, and maybe he is slipping and falling here and there, but we'll get into that as we go. So, of course, the vegans have latched on, and probably anybody else who is not on board with keto is going to point at this one unicorn of weight regain and say, motherfucker, this is not the diet. You see? You fucking see, bitch? We can't think like that. We got to think in terms of statistically. And what I did during the research I was doing on this particular video is I went out to try and find other people who had regained weight. Now, I can go on YouTube and type in keto weight loss and get hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of success stories with before and after pictures, and I did this, I did that, this worked, this didn't work, this is my stumbling blocks, all kinds of good information. However, when I did the same thing for keto weight gain, or I gained weight on a ketogenic diet, I found very little anecdotal evidence saying that this is a problem. That's the very first thing I did, to be honest with you. Is this a recurring theme? Is this something going on with everyone? Now, my personal experience is you do plateau on a ketogenic diet. A ketogenic diet, in my opinion, is not a weight loss diet. It is a energy balance diet. The weight loss comes from fasting. You do spontaneously fast on a ketogenic diet, but even that has its limits. And if you overdo either the eat less or the move more or both, you can still throw your metabolism out of whack. So the first thing that I'm thinking when it comes to Jimmy Moore's weight regain, I looked at some of his food diaries, which included exercise. He was doing anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour of cardio and maybe some resistance training in there, but very minimal on that, a lot of cardio. And he's eating about 2,600 calories, weighing 300 pounds, which is a caloric deficit. And if you consistently are in a caloric deficit over time, your metabolism will slow down. The amount of energy you burn at rest, sitting on your ass, will lower. And there's nothing you can do in the gym, aside from going to the gym for 8 hours a day, that will offset that. You can lower your metabolism by up to 500 fucking calories. And it'll stay there. And even after you start feeding properly for a while, which means you will regain weight and gain more weight possibly than you lost from being in a caloric deficit. A caloric deficit is not the way to go for weight loss. And I think a lot of people who do keto forget that. They plateau or they fail to lose weight and they become obsessed with lowering their caloric intake or increasing their energy expenditure by going and pounding the fuckmaster all day. That is not what you need to do. You simply need to eat what you're burning. You need to be in that balance. And over time, your body will become comfortable at that weight and will gradually lower your set point. And it will take care of itself over time. As you spend a significant amount of time at a certain weight, and I'm demonstrating this with my own weight loss, you will gradually get lower and lower and lower until you are at a healthy level. And it could take years. This is not an overnight thing. Everybody's in a fucking hurry. I've always told you guys, never be in a fucking hurry. You didn't get fat overnight. You didn't fuck yourself up overnight. It took you many years to become obese, to become diabetic, to become fucked up with a fatty liver. You're not going to cure it overnight. You've built up insulin resistance to sometimes catastrophic proportions, and you're not going to bounce back very quickly. I wish it was that way. I wish you could bounce back quickly and easily. But this has been almost a 3-year journey. As my birthday comes up, this will be 3 years of intermittent fasting and experiments with ketogenic diet and pretty much carb cycling, because I don't seem to sustain it for more than 8 or 9 weeks at a time before I do a refeed of some kind. I'm getting better with that, and I do plan on making my keto times a lot more prominent in my life, but I haven't ruled out occasional carb refeeds here and there, which might even be healthy, I'm hearing rumblings of in some cases. Now, I'm not talking sugar binges or pizza binges or that kind of shit. I'm talking, some of the, lower glycemic carbs or, not the refined shit, some whole grain shit, not even grain-based really, mainly, potatoes and stuff like that. Some healthier starches that are going to jack your insulin up, but overall are break down into complete glucose. They don't fuck with your liver because there's no fructose. And I believe once you heal your fatty liver of its issues, that you can eventually consume periodic carbs. Not insane, nothing above 30% per a day. Which is still a very low, it's a low carb diet at that point. It's not a ketogenic diet. But you got to understand that you're trying to tell the body to lose what it spent all this time storing. And when it does so, your leptin drops, your brain is triggered to say, look, we're burning off more energy than we're taking in. This is unacceptable. It's time to ramp up the hunger, lower the metabolism, and make exercise as efficient as possible. We need to stop this from happening, and it responds. That is the flaw with eat less, move more. You have to eat properly during this weight loss. Now, fasting is a bit of a different beast because once you are fat adapted, i.e. longer than 72 hours if you're eating a standard American diet, but pretty quick if you're fat adapted from a ketogenic diet, you can switch over to a fast and efficiently get access to your fat and use it efficiently for energy. This does not happen if you're a standard American diet. You will be hungry. You will have serious repercussions for your metabolism. But the weight loss part of this, if weight loss is your reason for doing a ketogenic diet, I started the ketogenic diet because I wanted to get rid of hunger. One of the biggest problems with losing weight is being fucking hungry all the time. Even when you're eating, you're still fucking hungry at the end of the meal. And it became profound during my early fasting periods. The longer the fast, the more I binged afterwards on the standard American diet. I knew something was wrong with that. That should not be the case. I should be able to regulate my body without using technology, without using fucking Fitbit or MyFitnessPal. My body should do its fucking job. And you know why I thought that? Because ancestrally, our bodies did a much better job than we do today with all this technology of regulating our body weight. Obesity was not a problem as much. I'm not saying there weren't no fat motherfuckers, but we're at 75% in America of people overweight or obese. Fatty liver is very common now. I just watched a radiology guy. He said he used to get 1 or 2 cases a week of fatty liver. Non-alcohol, by the way. Now he gets 4 or 5 a day through his radiology. And he showed the pictures of what the fatty liver looks like and all of that. And that is the problem. And the scary part is the livers he was showing, the people who were metabolically damaged, not all of them were fat. Some of them were thin on the outside, fat on the inside, which means they are going to get diabetes, heart disease, or any of these other metabolic diseases that crop up when your liver is fucked. You can't fuck up your liver. It's too important. And it can be seen plain as day. You can even just get an ultrasound, which I believe is available everywhere to determine if you have a fatty liver. You can get a DEXA scan. You can get an MRI if you're a rich motherfucker or you have a really awesome insurance plan that'll pay for just a random fucking MRI for no reason. I doubt you'll find that. The problem that we have to repair is a substantial one. And Jimmy Moore is very, very metabolically damaged. And he has been this whole time. Now, I do not believe he is doing the right things based on my observations and listening to there was a podcast of his I listened to where they went over the weight regain and some of the lab results. And he's lost because he's eating a ketogenic diet. He's keeping his carbs down. I don't really dispute that much, but there are some things I am noticing, and the biggest thing that's jumping out at me was his energy intake versus his energy expenditure. Early on, he wasn't fasting at all. He was eating 3-4 times a day, between snacks and meals. One of the things you got to understand is a ketogenic diet is not a low insulin diet. It is not. If you are eating meat and protein, you will have an insulin response. Particularly red meat has just as bad an insulin response as carbs do. When you're eating on a ketogenic diet, you are ramping up insulin. It's a little more efficient. It goes down a lot quicker. It shunts amino acids for muscle repair. The insulin is an important part. And manipulating it is how you lose weight, not caloric. Your manipulation of insulin is the most important factor. When your insulin's up, you can't burn fat. You're not burning fat. You're storing shit. You're putting shit away. When your insulin's down, then you can go out and get some fat. And the whole object of the weight loss game is to keep your insulin down as long as possible without being in a caloric deficit necessarily. Because what happens when you're fasting is you are using your body fat for energy. So you are not in a caloric deficit. Whereas if you're doing eat less, move more and eating 6 small meals a day, your insulin's up all the time. So you're in a caloric deficit because you are not accessing your fat while your insulin's up. You're not. You're burning off your glycogen. If you don't keep putting glycogen back, you'll bonk. You'll fucking just drop. And that is the flaw of Eat Less, Move More that has pretty much been being fought over the past 30 years. But if you're fat adapted and you start a fast, you have direct access to that fat energy with minimal problems. And you will be less hungry than a carb burner who does a long fast. I've proven this in myself, and I'm sure for those of you who have self-experimented with this, that when you do a fast, you can go a hell of a lot longer before getting hungry on a ketogenic diet than you can on a carb, standard American, or vegan diet. And in fact, I would argue on a vegan diet, you're probably hungry a lot even though you're eating. At least I know that's the way I am when I just have a plant-based meal. I find it doesn't satiate me at all. Even if I put nuts in the mix. Nuts, it's got protein. No. Nuts don't fill me. I don't feel full if I eat nuts as a source of protein. Only animal protein seems to do the job when it comes to getting really full really quickly. Same thing with fat. Animal fats seem to do the job really quickly. Olive oil doesn't seem to do it very well. Cheese does it pretty well, but that's animal protein, animal fat. But that's not here to trigger vegans, but they're going to be watching this because they're all over Jimmy Moore right now. And I understand. You see somebody fail and everybody wants to pounce on the motherfucker. And point is the sole reason that you should not eat animal-based shit. Wrong. He's a unicorn of weight regain. And my biggest thing with him is his energy expenditure has far outpaced his energy intake consistently over time. He's done some long fasts. He's lost and regained on those fasts, which anyone who's done a long fast knows it's not the end-all be-all. If it was, everybody would do a fucking 30-day fast, be thin and stay thin. That's not how it works. When you go over 72 hours to up to 5 days, depending on your energy expenditure, your metabolism will drop and stay dropped for a while till you build it back up by over-consuming in some cases, enough calories to regain all the fat you lost. You can't do it that quickly and expect to keep it. Same thing with Eat Less, Move More. You can't burn off fat very quickly and expect to keep it. The faster your weight loss, the more you're going to plateau and regain. Because the brain wants this balance. Your hormones are the key to weight loss. Manipulating them properly. Another thing I noticed with Jimmy Moore is his excessive consumption of aspartame, which is the sweetener used in most diet sodas. They may be switching over to sucralose, but sucralose isn't much better in this regard. I recently looked up the insulin response of certain artificial sweeteners. Stevia, believe it or not, has an insulin response. It's a small one, definitely smaller than sugar, but it does so non-calorically. So what happens is you would end up dropping your blood glucose by raising your insulin, also cutting off access to fat burning so you can put yourself in an energy crisis. And what happens initially when you do that? You get hungry. Cells aren't getting their energy, you get hungry. That's how it works. So overuse of artificial sweeteners, including stevia, can cause this. Erythritol does not cause an insulin response and is pretty much 90% plus excreted, untouched through the body. So erythritol is a sugar alcohol, in my opinion, the safest of them. But these are crutches for people who are sugar addicted, and if you can get off of them, then you should. But aspartame has a significant insulin response, will make you hungry because you are raising insulin while not addressing your glucose, while not pumping more glucose into your veins. And when you do that, your blood sugar drops, which is a trigger of hunger, among many. Your brain will sense the blood sugar drop. You're probably not in a strong enough level of ketosis, because ketosis tends to be a very smooth, gradual line, and drastic shifts in energy expenditure can cause energy crisis when you're a keto. Unless you are seriously fat adapted. You're used to working out while you're fat adapted. There's a lot of training involved in that, in adapting your body. But consistently over-abusing frankenfoods and supplements and, things that were not available in nature. And I know I keep preaching ancestral health, and I know it's almost impossible to have true ancestral health in today's food environment. We do the best we can with what we got. But Atkins bars and shakes and Franken desserts and keto cookies and keto pies and keto this and keto cheesecake, those are great alternative desserts that should be consumed on a very rare basis. No more than once a week. I would argue once a week might be a little excessive. Special occasions, probably. Every couple of weeks, maybe. But overall, a keto Franken dessert does put you at risk for over-consuming carbs, spiking insulin too high, over-consuming protein, almond flour. And when you do these things, you are taking in enough protein to raise gluconeogenesis and at the same time spiking insulin, lowering blood sugar, which will trigger gluconeogenesis to make more glucose for your blood because your blood sugar dropped. You don't have any sugar or carbs coming in. You're experiencing then an energy crisis. Your brain's going, what the fuck? So your liver ramps up some gluconeogenesis, gives you some more blood glucose. During all this, your cortisol is probably rising, which isn't an issue with Jimmy Moore. He put his blood panel out. His cortisol levels were low, and some would argue too low, which is a sign of adrenal fatigue, which could be the case too. So if I were Jimmy Moore and I regained all the weight that I lost, which he hasn't done, by the way. He's 300 pounds. His initial weight was over 400 pounds. So he's still down 100 pounds after all these years, which is a pretty good accomplishment. However, people aren't going to see that. People don't care. If you look at the pictures of him, which I've been showing, he's overweight. He's obese. And he's got a fatty liver still. So I would evaluate the Frankenfoods. Get rid of them. First of all, for a while, once you're down, maybe every once in a while work one in. I would not increase carbs in his case because his blood sugars are in the 90s, which after you're on keto for so long, you should be in the 70s consistently, which means he was diabetic to start. And while you can put diabetes in remission and keep your blood glucose in the 90s range while on a ketogenic diet, the moment you stray or the moment you overdo it or raise your blood sugar from one means or another, you are prone to jump right back into diabetes. you're not really curing insulin resistance very quickly. It takes a long, long time to reverse insulin resistance. However, you can control your blood sugar with your diet and not progress in the disease of diabetes and the disease of heart disease. Not saying you undid all the damage and the clogging of the arteries and shit, but you can stop from going further, which is a goal, and a good goal, and doing so without the pharmaceutical industry. That's important. This is a study of one that went wrong. There are things he can still try. Another thing I would do in his case is eat ad libitum one day, as in whenever he's hungry, and eat to satiety, which I don't think he's doing. Not if he is in a calorie deficit. He will probably be hungry and stop because he thinks he's eating too much protein or too much this or too much that. He's very analytical of what he's doing. And that can be a fault on your feast day. You should eat normally. And by normally, I mean whenever you're fucking hungry, and eat liberally till you're full. And people are going to be like, no, I'm going to overeat. Well, what's worse? Overeating and maybe gaining a pound that day, but then losing it subsequently. Or undereating, tanking your metabolism for a couple weeks, and regaining all the weight anyway, and then gaining some more on top of that because your metabolism didn't ramp up because you didn't overconsume. That's the thing that happens when you're on a ketogenic diet. If you overdo it and your hormones are finally balanced properly, you've been fat adapted a long time, if you overdo it, your metabolism will rise. You will burn more at rest. You will be more active. You'll have more energy to go out and do shit. If you're a gym rat at that point, that's a good time to exercise. You got plenty of energy. Your body's trying to get rid of it. It can ramp it up to 500 calories in the other direction. But we never get there because we're so paranoid that we're going to overeat that we're lucky if we hit maintenance when you're in a weight loss pattern. And it's really, we got to change the way we think about this calories in, calories out bullshit, which is still being beat to death. And it has failed. 75% of motherfuckers are overweight. And we've been preaching eat less, move more my whole fucking life. And I don't think it's because people aren't doing it, because I see plenty of people. I hear them all, I'm going to the gym, I need a gym buddy, and gym, pumping, picking shit up, putting shit down, pound that fuckmaster, yeah, get some. All the time. I'm seeing that, I'm hearing it, and some people it works for, but when they stop, the weight comes back, and then that usually disheartens them because they busted their ass to lose that weight. And to see it come back very quickly, in most cases, will not motivate them to do it again. And what I've been trying to share with you guys is a way of doing this without doing that. And I don't go to the gym. I do some physical activity when I want to. I hike. I carry lots of shit while I'm hiking. You know, I put myself through some physical punishment, and I make sure to eat accordingly. I purposely didn't do a long fast after this carb refeed last week because I was afraid that I had burned more energy than I took in during the trip because the meals were small and the fucking energy expenditure was huge. And I knew that if I didn't feed my body properly, by eating liberally, and believe me, when on my feed days, I've been eating like a beast. I even had some keto desserts. You know, I had them chocolate chip fucking keto cookies from Keto Connect and shit. So, you know, and yet I've been consistently dropping the weight since I've returned. I'm back down in the 180s. I came back in the 190s. I've lost a half an inch around the belly since I got back, and it's only been, 3 days? And that's through keto with ADF, which I believe is a nice balance routine because a 36-hour eating window allows for plenty of energy intake, and even an opportunity to overeat the energy. But if you're fat adapted and your energy metabolism is proper, that isn't a problem. If you overconsume, it becomes a problem when that system's fucked. That system is fucked when there are carbs and sugar involved. Refined carbs and sugar are the bad guys in this. That will put you as a carb burner, make you reliant on blood glucose for energy. And when that energy drops, you don't jump right into getting access to your fat. And if you don't fast regularly, you will gain weight consistently. Or if you don't exercise, you can substitute exercise and fasting. But the bottom line is if you are in a long-term caloric deficit, your metabolism will fall. You will lose weight for a period of time. Then you will level out. And then depending on what you do at that point, some people double down and they lose a little more weight, but then they level out again. Eventually you get to a point where you just can't double down anymore because you're already down to like 800 calories a day and you're going to the gym for a couple hours a day, which means you're essentially burning off every ounce of energy you've eaten and then some, and some muscle and some fat, and you're losing shit tons of weight, but at the same time you are burning a hell of a lot less energy at rest. And then when you stop that, or you skip a beat, or you finally give in and have that badass meal, your weight starts to creep back up. In some cases can skyrocket depending on how fucked up you are metabolically. And it doesn't stop right away. You got to go back in the other direction. You got to gain more weight than you lost before your metabolism starts going, hey, all right, we're good. We did it. Party on. We gained 20 more pounds this time. Surely this motherfucker's not going to die from starvation this time. Regardless of the fact that you're 300 pounds, which, the body doesn't seem to give a shit. All it knows is your leptin dropped significantly, or if in the case of a high insulin situation, which will reduce your leptin sensitivity. Insulin blocks leptin. This is kind of a basic thing that gets overlooked a lot. If your insulin's high all the time, you're not as sensitive to leptin. And you're hungry all the time because you are sensitive to blood sugar changes, which are like a fucking roller coaster. That's why people feel like they have to eat every couple hours or they feel famished, is their blood sugar drops. Meanwhile, if they just rode out that drop, they would normalize. I'm covering a lot of information in this talk about Jimmy Moore. He does make it look bad. I don't dispute that. When you see somebody obese get up and preach the ketogenic diet, it can be dissuasive. And I would argue he should stop and fix his problem and then come back and tell us what happened. Tell us how he fixed it. Do I think he's fucked and can't fix it? No, I do not. I think he needs to experiment with feeding properly, maybe even doing occasional carb refeeds, which he's afraid to do because it does throw his blood sugar way up in the diabetic range. And, I would do that right away. I would experiment with maybe overeating, some fat and, overeating a ketogenic diet a little bit. Yeah, he'll gain weight to start, but it will also raise his leptin. I would not advocate anything, eating more than once a day. One meal a day should be the minimum fasting he does. And then over time, throw in a couple 48 hours, maybe ADF. I would recommend ADF ultimately for him. ADF and then eat your fucking face off on your feed days, ketogenically. Try that for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. See what happens. Do you gain more weight? What do you got to lose? You can fast that weight back off. And if you're fat adapted, if you're checking, and he does test his blood ketones and all of that, if you're fat adapted and ketogenic, you can fast and not tank your metabolism because you have plenty of body fat on board and you have full access to it when your insulin drops. Another thing that I couldn't find is his fasting insulin levels. He didn't seem to check them, which is ironic considering he's very biometric centered and does a lot of testing on himself. What's your fasting insulin like? What's your insulin like when you're drinking those fucking aspartame filled fucking shitty sodas? Which I don't advocate. It's bad enough I put sweetener in my coffee, but if I drank 8 fucking aspartame sweetened sodas a day, it would probably have a negative consequence. And as such, I try not to consume sweeteners on my fasting days. I try to keep things, black coffee when possible. Sometimes I'll still put heavy cream in as a crutch. If I feel like I'm going to break the fast, I would rather just throw some heavy cream in the mix rather than just going all out. But, it's an important, a lot of people forget the eating part of fasting. We're so afraid to undo all the work we've done, to undo our weight loss, that we inevitably drive ourselves into this caloric deficit without access to our fat for energy. And keto is not immune to this. It'll take away your hunger, no doubt. It does not stop your metabolism from doing its job. In fact, it rights the ship. And when your metabolism is functioning properly and your hormones are regulating your body weight properly, if you consistently underconsume, your metabolism slows down. It's a fact. It's unavoidable. We haven't found a way around it. And we probably never will, because it's a fundamental survival technique for our system. We'd have to change our genetics to get rid of that. And I don't think that's happening anytime soon. So energy balance is a thing. And ketogenic diet does put you in energy balance. However, failure to eat enough calories to cover your energy expenditure, whether you're doing it in the gym, whether you're fasting for long periods of time, whatever. If you don't eat enough when you're supposed to eat, you're in a deficit. You're spiking your insulin on your feast day, but you're not taking in enough calories, and you don't have access to your fat because your insulin spiked. And you do. You spike your insulin when you eat on a ketogenic diet. You do. Unless you eat fat only, which nobody does. It always involves some kind of carbs, low as they may be, which creates a slight insulin response because they're low glycemic carbs usually. But it also includes a fair amount of protein, which will spike your insulin just as much as carbs. People don't realize that. The only way to be truly low insulin is to fast. And that gives you access to the fat you're carrying. If you are consistently low calorie and you do not access that fat because your insulin is up, you lower your metabolism every time, without fail. And you either have to double down on the energy expenditure or the caloric reduction to continue your progress, or you stay where you are and eventually start regaining the weight. Because your body will rebound. This is not disputed. This is in so many studies. It's a very observable trait. If you talk to Dr. Jason Fung, and he cites the studies that illustrate this. Look up his lectures, and you'll find one where he goes over the studies about weight regain, Biggest Loser, that kind of stuff. The reason diets fail. And looking at Jimmy Moore's statistics and his pattern and the way he's been eating, he looks like another case of the Biggest Loser. You lost a lot of weight, a shit ton, a couple 100 pounds, and then you gained it back. And you're gaining it back. Or you're stalling, going back up because you're trying to stop the weight gain by doubling down in some way. Let your body do its job. Don't fuck with it more because you can't push it. You might spend a few years at a plateau. I don't deny that. I've spent over a year still overweight. Got my big toe and normal BMI now. Finally. After 3 years now of doing this, I'm finally dipping my toe in normal BMI a couple times now. I'll be happy once it's below that and stays there. And I normalize there, but I know what I got to do. I got to just stick with it. Keep going. Make sure on my eat days that I'm not in a deficit. That I eat to satiety. That I bounce back from the fasting period. And then each time I'm switching between body fat and food for energy, I become more efficient at that. And as the body realizes that you're not starving, that you are using your body fat appropriately from fasting, over time you will lower that set point. And it will be slow. The lower your weight gets, the slower this process becomes. And yes, you can force it. You can go and try and take that extra step, or you do a 30-day fast or whatever. But if you do it that way, you're going to probably regain the weight. There are unicorns. There are exceptions to rules. This does not work for everyone. You know, there are unicorns who may have other issues that lead to weight regain, and I have not ruled that out in the Jimmy Moore case, that maybe there's something going on. But based on the transparency of him putting out his blood work, he hasn't put out his meals in a while, and, you know, quite frankly, I think he's not happy that he's regained the weight. Since he's built a business out of being a weight loss guru, much like I'm doing. You know, and it's sad the way people are pouncing on him, and I'm not happy about that, because I know the same thing could happen to me if I regained weight. Oh my God, it would be brutal. Vegans everywhere would stick something in my ass, or they'd gnaw on carrots and shit while talking about fucking chicken vagina blood. There's all kinds of stress that can come with this too, with the, you know, having the level of accountability that I do and that he does, and that many people who share their journey online do. Because what happens if you fuck up? What happens if you give up? What happens if you let motherfuckers down? Jimmy Moore is letting motherfuckers down. I got a buddy that's trying to go keto that's reading one of his books right now. What happens when he sees this video where he sees that Jimmy Moore gained back a shit ton of weight? What does that do for someone's motivation? Which is why I would argue that Jimmy Moore should shut the fuck up, figure out what the problem is and address it, and then come back and say, look, you don't go to Low Carb Vale and do a fucking ketogenic speech with your fucking gut hanging out like that. You don't. I realize that's shallow and we shouldn't think of it that way, but you're sending a bad message to people who may be on the fence. You know? I mean, you can see my before and after just by going to my first vlog and going to here now. I do still have a belly. I'm not happy with my belly. I've been targeting my belly, and I've been making progress on my belly. You know, I've dipped below my 36 inches. I'm under what's considered unhealthy for waist, which is 40 inches for males. A much better metric is half your height around in circumference around your belly button. And I've touched into that metric a few times, being below 36. That is my goal. That's the point where I'm consistently below 36 inches of the waist, is the point where I will shift to one meal a day. You know, or maybe more, depending on how hungry I get. Because I will want to continue the energy balance when it becomes time for maintenance. I won't want to burn as much body fat necessarily. Or maybe I will. I don't know. We'll see. But for now, my goal is modest. I'm not looking for six-pack abs or rippling muscle definition or any of that shit. I just want to be healthy and happy. And I'm pretty close to achieving both of those goals, if not already there, some would argue, health-wise. because I'm healthy. I'm not having any problems. I'm not having issues. Getting blood work this next year. We'll see. Maybe I am. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. And then what? Then that pisses everyone off and I become an asshole. And then vegans everywhere celebrate and rejoice as another keto guy fails or whatever. But to be honest with you, having done my homework, I don't see a lot of keto failure stories out there. And believe me, there would be. Because there's people who want to say, I failed at this and I failed at that. And if anything, it could be argued that sustainability is an issue with the ketogenic diet, that people fall off of it because of their addiction to carbs and sugar and so on and so forth. And I don't doubt that maybe Jimmy Moore could be doing that on the side, but it would show in his blood profile, which it does not. The blood sugar thing is a little questionable on how he's maintaining a blood sugar in the 90s fasted while being fat adapted. It's questionable. That smacks to me of overconsumption of carbohydrate, which can happen if you're eating a lot of frankenfoods. So my advice to him, start getting your energy expenditure up. Rebuild your metabolism. Don't be afraid to gain 10, 15 pounds in the process. Do it properly. Don't eat sugar. Don't eat refined carbs. Ramp up the fat. Ramp up the metabolism. Overconsume your calories. Track it if you have to. Track your energy expenditure for your weight. Use my fitness motherfucking pal. I'm telling you to count calories, but I'm not telling you to count calories to be in a deficit. I'm telling you to count calories to make sure you eat enough, especially going to the gym like you do. Reverse dieting, I believe, is the term for it. And there's something there metabolically. Your metabolism can go up. It can be ramped up. And in a healthy motherfucker, that is exactly what happens when you overeat. Unfortunately, we've lost our health way. And there's a lot more people in the others category. You ever wonder how them motherfuckers that are thin all the time stay thin? That's because their body is doing its job of energy balance. When they overeat, their metabolism rises and burns off the excess energy. When they undereat, their metabolism slows down. That's what our bodies are supposed to do without us fucking with it. Only problem is sugar, processed foods, refined carbs and grains, overconsumed. Fuck that system up. And we've seen it over the past 30 to 40 years, even over the past 100 years if you look at some of the earlier data. We've been fucking chipping away at our natural metabolism ability, our natural energy balance ability. We've been chipping away at it. So to all the vegans that want to point, or all the other, standard American dieters who think fasting alone is the end-all be-all, or pounding the fuckmaster fasting and standard American diet. I'm here to tell you, energy balance is the goal to health, not, being in a caloric reduction your whole life. We need to get our bodies working properly, doing their job so that we don't have to do it for them, which is what we've been doing. I've been hacking my body, hacking my biochemistry to get where I am at. I want to get to a point where I don't have to actively do that anymore. And I do believe a ketogenic diet with light intermittent fasting, ADF at the most, is a sustainable lifestyle going forward that will allow me to normalize those hormones and to make my body healthy enough to do its job when it comes to regulating my body weight, my energy expenditure, and my metabolism. That is how you fix your weight. Get all that working properly, and you get your set point down slowly over time, and you become healthy. And you stay that way, sustainably. So, You can take eat less, move more, and shove it up your ass as far as I'm concerned. I'm done with that. I'm not about being in a caloric deficit. I am about lowering insulin, getting access to my body fat in intermittent periods of time, and then letting my body know it's okay to make some new fat in the process and to balance and slowly tip the scales and let my body normalize on its own. Because if you try and force it, you try and push too hard, you double down, you do all of these drastic measures to knock that scale down, the more you do that, the more your body will fight back. That is the important thing. And you shouldn't lose sight of that. Take a break every once in a while, too. That's one thing I've learned this past week. I took a break from fasting. I took a break from keto. I was in an energy deficit. I am no longer there. And I have seen some shifts. I did lower my metabolism. I did even have an energy crisis after I got back from a week of carbs and heavy amounts of physical activity. And I crashed. I needed a nap. I haven't needed a nap in fucking forever. Unless I only slept 4 hours a day, which I sleep. I'm a good sleeper. So, it's about maintaining that balance over time. And as you do so, your weight will drop. I was plateaued in the 190s for a long time. Now my plateau is in the 180s. Yay me. That's one step away from normal BMI. And once I am consistently plateaued below normal BMI or at normal BMI, in the lower 180s even, I'm happy. I'm good. I can call myself good at that point. And then you'll see the before and after pictures. Only instead of the headline jerking, I lost this in 6 months, this is me then, this is me now, for people to fap to as they go and eat less, move more, or whatever it is people are doing. Mine will say, I lost blah, 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 blah in 3.5 years, which is about when I think I'll hit it. Another half a year or so. Not a very fucking, clickbaity title, if you ask me, but a good illustration on what it should look like. Jimmy Moore's been at it a while, and he's been at it hardcore, and as far as I'm concerned, he's been in a deficit for a long time. And his body is fighting it back because he's been essentially starving himself for so long. You got to refeed. You got to replenish. You got to rebuild. You got to let your body know that you're not dying. You're not starving. You're not in a deficit forever. People say, oh, fasting is... No. Not if you've triggered the enzymes and you've triggered your insulin, you've messed with your hormones enough to know that you can switch to your own body fat as energy. When your body fat starts to get low is when your body's like, okay, motherfucker, okay. You got to keep that shit in mind. It's just a fact. And it's not a fun fact. We don't want to have to spend years being overweight and obese. But I'm positive that I'm moving in the right direction, that I'm doing the right things at this point because of how my body is responding. I'm seeing definition in places that I used to be just big bulbous piles of fat. I'm seeing definition in my abdominal region. There's little divots that didn't used to be fucking there. And I'll go over this when I get to my goal. I'll show you the difference because I got pictures of me from fucking 2.5 years ago and me today. And we'll go over that. But I don't want that to be the reason. I don't want that to be what motivates people. I want you to try these things without that. Without that goal in mind. Without that I have to look a certain way to be healthy in mind. Because guess what? 10% of obese people are metabolically healthy. Imagine that. There are more unhealthy skinny people than there are unhealthy fat people. Another statistic you can look up. Metabolic damage doesn't care if you're fat. It's a symptom that can often coincide with it, and most obese people are metabolically fucked up. But there are more metabolically damaged normal body weight people. And that number's declining as we become more overweight and obese. And we're ignoring it. It's politically correct to be fat now. It's politically incorrect to say that someone's fat. It's a true story. We're normalizing it. We're normalizing our death. We're ignoring the problem because it's not fun to face. So, Jimmy, if by any chance you see my dumbass talking about you, that's my thoughts. Maybe you've already tried it. Maybe I'm way off because I'm not a fucking expert. I'm just an asshole. What I would do in your shoes is I would take a break. A long break. So maybe stay keto during the break, but not worry so much about what you're eating and your blood panels and your fucking weight and the scale or any of that. Stop measuring everything. No blood ketone meter, no breathalyzer, none of that shit. Just eat. Don't worry about pounding the fuckmaster. Just eat. Then come back. Throw in some fasts. Some small fasts, not large fasts, because your metabolism's not doing well right now. I don't think you should do a long fast. I think 36 should be the max for you. ADF. Very viable. 1 meal a day. Very viable. Black coffee. Water. Then for dinner, or maybe late lunch, early dinner, somewhere in there, wherever you feel the hungriest, have a big, huge meal. If you worked out, have a bigger, huger meal. If you get too full to have a big enough meal, split it up into lunch and dinner. Do a 16-hour-a-day fast. Whatever you got to do to get the calories in. Don't be in a deficit. That's what I'm preaching. I haven't counted calories in a long time, and look what's happened with my weight. In fact, the only weight regain I've experienced is when I went back to a standard American diet with fasting, 1 meal a day, and I regained weight eating the standard American diet, 1 meal a day. Regained quite a bit, 15 pounds. And then I said, oh, fuck. And I got back on the keto horse. And it fell right back off. And not only did it fall back off, I made progress on my plateau. So there's something to be said about taking breaks, refeeding, and eating enough. It can move the needle. You'll gain weight while you're doing it. But then when you go back and you swing the pendulum the other way and you get into the fasting and being stricter with the keto, you'll start shifting it back down and you will surpass your plateau over time. You just got to keep chipping away at it. And it can be disheartening. Going a year without a fucking weight loss, I did it. Without getting below 190s, 194, 195, 198, hovering in that area. Now I'm hovering between 185 and 190. Can get disheartening over a long period of time, but you got to keep going. You got to keep plugging along. Experiment too, along the way. Try out different things. Sometimes you'll make backwards progress, but you can always undo it. I have not ever regained weight to a point where I was worried about going back to my starting weight. I always knew there was something I could do to stop the weight regain. And if you actively monitor it, that's a true story. When you start putting on 5-6 pounds, you know you're overdoing it on carbs. You know you might be over-consuming protein at that point. You might be eating too much while not moving enough. Or maybe your metabolism's fucked up because you didn't eat enough to cover your energy expenditure over a long period of time. There's all kinds of factors that you can fuck up. Great thing about it is you have all kinds of tools to fix it. But remember, I'm not a fucking expert. I'm just a fucking asshole. So good luck to those of you out there. Share your shit in the comments. Did you experience a massive weight regain while fat adapted? Ever? Because I haven't. I rebounded on a ketogenic diet after a long fast of 5 days. I essentially gained back the entire fast, which happened recently, because my hunger increased, my appetite increased, and I ate accordingly, and I regained all the weight from the fast, essentially making the long fast useless in terms of weight loss. What it might have done is move the needle, might have allowed me to nudge further down in the proper direction. Maybe my carb refeed this last week, that could have helped nudge me. That remains to be seen as my weight continues to drop while being keto and ADF and eating properly, eating enough. Definitely doing that right now because I'm not physically active and I've eaten plenty on my eat days and my weight's still falling off. Tells me my metabolism's ramping up appropriately. The energy crash might have been electrolyte related because I have been pissing like a beast as the water weight falls out and the kidneys excrete everything. So, it's about knowing what's going on with your body. It goes a long way. It goes to the point where you don't need to worry about ketones. You don't need to worry about your blood sugar necessarily, unless you're diabetic. You start to see what happens to your body when you fuck up. You'll feel cold. You'll know your metabolism's dropping. You'll feel low energy. There are telltale signs when things are going wrong. And to know what to do in response to those is empowering and will help you maintain a healthy weight the rest of your life. I have no doubt that my weight loss is permanent at this point. Might be too soon at 3 years to make that call, but here I am, 3 years after I started this journey, in 180s. I touched my toe going up a couple times. I touched my toe going lower a couple times. But bottom line is I'm hovering in the 180s at age 42, as I turn 42 in the next week. And for 6 foot, that's pretty good. It's not normal BMI necessarily, but it's close enough. I could rest on my laurels here and be plenty happy with just a belly. Would fit right in today's society. Most people I know have that belly. Eat a hell of a lot worse than I do, which means they're going to have a lot more problems than I will. Dose determines the poison in that case. Well, this is it for this weekend. I need to take I've been burning the candle at both ends. I've been fucking working, virtually nonstop ever since I got back. I need to decompress a little. So I will try and go live tomorrow, Sunday, briefly for an hour maybe. I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet. Maybe talk about everything that's been going on between the vegan controversy and the Jimmy Moore thing and any other questions you guys might bring up that day. Maybe I'll just make a Q&A day. See how that goes. I haven't really done that yet. All the live broadcasts I've done were themed and then followed with Q&A. Maybe I'll just start out with a small, short little spiel, and then as soon as I see people start coming in, transition to Q&A. So maybe we'll do a Sunday Q&A, we'll call it. Kind of rings some bell or some shit. Have a nice motherfucking day. And shit. Oh, before you go, can you like and subscribe? Because we're getting closer to 4,000 motherfuckers. And I'd like to see 4,000 motherfuckers before the end of December. Lets me know that I'm still moving in the right direction. So if you found this shit useful or you found any of my shit useful, like and subscribe. You can also go to Patreon in the description and check my daily blog, see what my weight is, how much fasting I'm doing, whether or not I'm fat adapted, what things I'm encountering along the way. I put all of that in there for $1 a month. Not a lot to ask. And it helps me continue to provide more content while not driving Uber or doing other odd jobs or taking a lot of photography gigs and that kind of shit. So more I make here, the less time I have to spend elsewhere. And I do currently have to spend a lot of time on the photography thing. So, let me know what you think. Have a nice motherfucking day and shit.